There's a kind of person who doesn't chase you, doesn't confuse you, and doesn't try to change you. Yet somehow, their calm presence stays with you long after they're gone. For someone with avoidant attachment, love is what they want the most, yet it's also what they fear the most. Not because they lack emotion, but because they've learned that closeness means loss of control, intimacy means vulnerability, and being truly seen feels like a threat. And then, one day, they meet someone who begins to shake that entire defense system. A person who doesn't pursue, doesn't pressure, doesn't manipulate, but simply stays, with unwavering empathy and emotional strength. In today's video, we'll walk through 8 profound and uncomfortable truths about what happens when an avoidant meets a super empath, someone who feels deeply but does not shrink themselves to earn love. This isn't a battle between right and wrong. It's the encounter between a person who's always running from connection and someone whose presence leaves no place to hide. If you've ever been hurt loving an avoidant, or if you are the one who tends to push others away without meaning to, this video is for you. Stay until the end, because what matters most is not blame, but clarity, the kind of understanding that helps you love without losing yourself. And if these topics resonate with you, if they touch something you haven't been able to name, hit subscribe and join us on this journey of emotional healing and growth. For someone with avoidant attachment, every connection feels like a risk. They love, but always with a part of themselves held back, a hidden exit always nearby. Their defense mechanisms, silence, distance, emotional control, rationalizing everything aren't cruelty. Their survival systems crafted through early attachment wounds that taught them connection can mean pain. But the real unraveling doesn't begin when someone leaves them. It begins when they meet a person who doesn't play the role. A person who doesn't chase after them, doesn't try to fix them, just stays. Calm, clear, grounded. This person, often a super empath, doesn't ignite the familiar cycle. Withdrawal, emotional testing, reconciliation, repeat. In that stillness, the avoidant begins to lose their footing. With no one to control, no emotional reaction to manage, they're forced to turn inward, and that's when the quiet panic begins. For the first time, they feel exposed. There's no external chaos to blame, no one to win or lose against. Only themselves and the buried, unprocessed emotions they've long avoided. What they once called freedom now feels like emptiness. Avoidance no longer protects. It reveals the internal isolation. They find themselves standing in the stillness created by the super empath, not a punishing silence, but a reflective one. And in that mirror, every outdated defense begins to quietly collapse, not through conflict, but simply because they no longer serve. The collapse isn't dramatic. It's like a silent crack running through the structure of their identity, but it marks the very first moment they might have the chance to meet themselves, if they're brave enough to stay in that discomfort long enough to see what lies beneath. When someone with avoidant attachment feels out of control, they often try to regain it by reshaping reality. They're skilled at reframing situations, justifying emotional distance. I just need space. I don't do well with clingy people, or there's nothing wrong with me, they're just too emotional. These aren't lies, they're sanitized versions of truth, polished to fit into the safety of their inner defense system. But when they encounter a super empath, someone who doesn't react in predictable ways, those filters begin to fall away. The super empath doesn't explode, doesn't accuse, doesn't play power games. They simply see and reflect things back as they are. No distortion, no exaggeration, no sugarcoating. Their gaze becomes a mirror, clear, grounded, and brutally honest, but entirely free of judgment. This is when the avoidant starts to feel like they're standing naked in front of themselves. No roles, no excuses. And if within them lies fear, emotional avoidance, and old, unhealed wounds, they're now surfacing silently under the gentle but undeniable spotlight of truth. It's not about being called out. It feels more like hearing the echo of your own soul from someone else, and realizing you may not have been honest with yourself for a long time. One calm look, a simple sentence, or a non-reactive pause can shake their inner world more than any confrontation ever could. Carl Jung once said, "We are not harmed by what is new, but by what we've refused to see." The super empath doesn't analyze the avoidant, they simply don't reject what's real. And what unsettles the avoidant most isn't criticism, it's being seen fully, clearly, with nowhere left to hide. Because the super empath doesn't perform to earn love and doesn't play the victim to keep someone near, their clarity becomes the most piercing reflection of all. It forces the avoidant to see the part they've long disowned, the shadow self, vulnerable, messy, needing care, but buried under layers of emotional detachment. That moment, however fleeting, might just be the first step for the avoidant to begin a true dialogue with themselves. A journey that leads through fragility, but also toward the one thing they thought they couldn't have, a connection that feels safe, deep, and whole. For the avoidant, silence isn't just a response, it's a carefully crafted defense mechanism built over years. When emotions run high, when intimacy feels overwhelming, or when they simply cannot name the needs rising within them, they disappear, they retreat, they close the door to connection. They've believed for so long, if they go quiet enough, far enough, feelings will eventually fade, as if they never existed. But everything changes when they meet a super empath. The super empath doesn't chase, they don't explode, don't beg, and don't perform emotional acrobatics to pull the avoidant back. But they also don't leave. They stay, calm, unmoving, steady, not demanding closeness, but not accepting abandonment either. And that is what deeply unsettles the avoidant. They're not being rejected, but they also can't control the rhythm. They're not being chased, but they can't escape. The super empath brings no clinginess but carries the weight of presence. It's like standing in front of a mirror that breathes silent, grounded, witnessing, and it doesn't flinch. This throws the avoidant into an internal crisis. Until now, disappearing was their way of regulating connection. But now, with no one reacting according to script, they're forced to face the question they've long avoided. What exactly am I running from, and why? Silence no longer feels like refuge. It becomes a void where they face themselves, without excuses, without distractions. In that space, all their old assumptions begin to crumble, that someone will always chase, that they can manage another's emotions through distance. The super empath's unwavering presence begins to stir something subtle in the avoidant psyche. They start to see, not everyone is invasive, not everyone demands surrender, not everyone collapses under distance. The super empath doesn't seek control. They seek truth, and the only requirement they hold is that the avoidant show up not in words, but with a presence that doesn't weaponize silence. When the avoidant realizes they are not being forced to run, something surprising begins to unfold. They no longer feel the need to. It's like standing in an old room and for the first time, opening the window to let light in. No noise, no accusations, just a presence, consistent and honest, that gives them no more places to hide. And sometimes, being quietly seen like that is the deepest healing of all. Emotional boundaries are widely studied in psychology, particularly in attachment theory and therapies like CBT and ACT. According to Dr. Judith S. Beck, 2011, boundaries are invisible fences that protect an individual's integrity, helping people differentiate between their own emotions, needs, and rights versus those of others. When super empaths set clear boundaries, their goal is not to control others, but to maintain their own clarity and emotional health. They understand that deep empathy requires protecting oneself from overextension and burnout. When an avoidant encounters these boundaries, they often experience confusion and fear. Their instinct has always been to control connections to feel safe. From early experiences, they learned that intimacy could be dangerous, that sharing feelings might be rejected or punished. The super empath's boundaries become a mirror they've never seen before. Someone can love, stay present, and empathize, yet maintain personal safety. For the avoidant, this conflicts with their instinct to invade others' emotions to preserve distance while staying protected. Attachment theory, Bowlby 1969, Ainsworth 1978, explains that when avoidants perceive consistent and intact boundaries, it challenges deeply held beliefs. Can they truly be present without hiding and still be accepted? They have rarely encountered a situation where connection is allowed without manipulation or distance. The stability and autonomy of the super empath forces them to pause their defense mechanisms, creating confusion and fear of losing control. Clinically, Dr. John G. Allen, 2019, notes that when avoidants face healthy emotional boundaries, they may experience cognitive dissonance, wanting closeness but fearing vulnerability. Yet, With consistent demonstration of respect and presence, they gradually learn that secure attachment doesn't require giving up control, and that one can connect without losing oneself. This moment represents the first step in relational repatterning. The super empath acts as a reflective, positive mirror, showing the avoidant that boundaries are not barriers, but frameworks for healthy connection. Recognizing this, the avoidant begins to experience safety and ease, letting go of fears of intrusion. They learn that consistent, respectful presence allows them to love without abandoning themselves. This fragile moment is transformative. It marks the avoidant's first experiments with new beliefs about connection. Closeness is not inherently dangerous, and emotions are not threats. The super empath's boundaries do not restrict freedom. They create space for honest dialogue with oneself, confrontation with fears, and the realization that healthy connection is possible. One of the most sophisticated mechanisms that avoidants develop is the ability to rewrite the narrative of their relationships and emotions. Over time, they craft gentle, controlled versions of reality. Everything is fine, I just need space, or I care, but I don't like to show it. These statements aren't merely excuses, they are tools to maintain a sense of safety, protecting themselves from emotional intrusion, hurt, or loss of control. But when faced with a super empath, someone who does not accept deception and does not indulge the mask, the dynamic changes completely. The super empath does not let harmless words obscure reality, and they do not react according to the avoidant's usual rhythm. They remain calm but firm, refusing to compromise on what is real. For the avoidant, this is the first time they experience losing control over the narrative. They can no longer manipulate how others perceive them or perform the script they've honed for years. Research by Bowlby, 1969, and Hazan and Shaver, 1987, notes that avoidants develop the habit of controlling the story as a means of self-protection, fearing that being truly seen could result in rejection or loss of control. The presence of a super empath changes everything. The avoidant has no familiar fallback, no one-sided reaction to manage the perception of others. The feeling is one of silent disorientation. With no habitual defense to rely on, they face the truths they've long hidden. What they once called calm suddenly cracks, and their mask seems to crumble from within. The disorientation isn't caused by attack, it's caused by having no familiar strategies left. Mikulincer and Shaver, 2016, highlight that when avoidance mechanisms are disrupted, initial reactions are stress, confusion, and fear, but with consistent empathy and stability, the avoidant gradually learns to accept emotions without retreating. A crucial aspect is the honesty of the super empath. They do not fix the avoidance story, but they refuse to accept half-truths or ambiguity. This forces the avoidant to face themselves objectively. Losing control over the narrative is not a failure, it's an opportunity to acknowledge the truth of one's emotions, take responsibility for inner experiences, and stop hiding. This moment is accompanied by confusion, anxiety, even fear, but it is also the first step toward genuine connection. When the avoidant realizes that the super empath does not react according to the old script, they begin to understand that not all emotions need to be controlled, not all stories need to be rewritten, and they can exist and be loved even when the raw truth is seen. Therefore, losing the power to rewrite the story is a critical moment in an avoidance emotional development. It offers a chance to drop the mask, confront inner fears, and recognize that the unwavering, non-judgmental presence of a super empath is the catalyst for learning to connect safely and authentically. For someone with avoidant attachment, silence is a strategic tool. They disappear when pressure arises, when connection deepens, or when another's emotions become overwhelming. Silence isn't just withdrawal, it is a way to control energy, maintain a sense of safety, and protect themselves from harm. Research on attachment and defense mechanisms, Mikulincer and Shaver, 2016, shows that avoidant behavior often stems from fear of being overwhelmed by emotions, and silence maintains a safe distance. Yet, when confronted with a super empath, someone who does not engage in manipulation or react according to familiar scripts, the entire logic of avoidance is disrupted. The super empath does not retaliate, persuade, or chase, but they remain present, steady, and mindful. Their silence is not withdrawal or avoidance. It is a deliberate presence, honoring their own emotions while keeping the relational space honest and stable. This, for the first time, causes the avoidant to feel activated but unable to name the sensation. They feel both seen through and disoriented, as for the first time silence is no longer a weapon but a mirror reflecting their inner self. According to research on effective attunement, Shore, 2003, a deliberate, present silence can create a neural sense of safety for the other person. For the avoidant, this paradoxically generates both anxiety and attraction. They are used to disappearing to escape emotions, but now, the super empath's mindful silence forces them to confront the aspects of themselves they have long hidden. This sensation is not typical fear or anger. It is a mixture of confusion, vulnerability, and deep stirrings of curiosity. Interestingly, attachment theory, Bowlby, 1969, suggests that when avoidants are activated but not pushed to flee, they experience a form of safe interaction for the first time. The super empath neither escalates nor judges, nor applies pressure. They simply stay at a distance close enough to render avoidance ineffective. Consequently, the avoidant realizes that withdrawing or using silence no longer provides safety. For the first time, they sense that their emotions can exist without avoidance, provoking both confusion and fascination. This behavior of the super empath is a silent yet powerful lesson. They do not need to control, fix, or react to maintain the connection. Their steadfast silence communicates, implicitly but clearly, I am here, and you can exist with your true feelings without disappearing or hiding. For the avoidant, this is the first experience of genuine safety, where silence becomes a space to see themselves and connect authentically. This moment, fragile and difficult to interpret, is a crucial step in the emotional growth of the avoidant. They learn that not all silences are threats. Not all emotions require avoidance. The super empath's silence becomes a healing tool, a powerful response without words, helping the avoidant rebuild trust in connection while retaining themselves. Avoidants often define themselves through the illusion of absolute independence. They have learned that to survive in a world they perceive as risky, they must rely solely on themselves. To avoid being hurt, they must maintain distance. To prevent disappointment, they must control everything. Attachment theory, Bowlby, 1969, and subsequent research, Mikulincer and Shaver, 2007, show that individuals with avoidant attachment develop extreme self-reliance and isolation as survival strategies in unstable emotional environments. They believe that the more independent they are, the less vulnerable they become. However, the presence of a super empath disrupts this model completely. The super empath does not cling, does not try to pull them in, and does not push them away. They are present in a steady, non-intrusive way, quiet, yet impossible to ignore. This creates a strange gap in the avoidant psyche. They are used to controlling everything to feel safe, but now they cannot manipulate the other's presence, nor can they turn it into a threat to flee from. This gap is often accompanied by a feeling of isolated yet uncomfortable self-sufficiency. The avoidant realizes that the sense of freedom and independence they've cultivated is not truly comforting, but a protective shell that masks unacknowledged needs, to be understood, to connect, to be seen. The super empath's calm presence forces the avoidant to confront the question they have long avoided. Am I truly okay being alone? Can I exist without self-isolation? Research on self-regulation and attachment needs, Mikulincer and Shaver, 2007, indicates that when avoidants encounter this safe gap, they experience mild stress, confusion, and an urge to test connection. They begin to recognize that independence no longer guarantees absolute safety. It has instead created mental isolation. For the first time, they feel unease in their own self-control, an uncomfortable yet curiosity-driven state, prompting them to reassess their life and relationships. Crucially, the super empath does not fill this gap. They provide no assurances and do not foster dependence. It is precisely their silence and non-clinging presence that teaches the avoidant to face the absence they have long evaded. This is a mirror reflecting that absolute self-reliance has never fully addressed the need for connection, and that secure connection can exist without compromising the self. This moment marks a turning point in the avoidant's emotional growth. When they feel the discomfort within their self-imposed isolation, They gain the ability to recognize connection as safe, understanding that security comes not from separation, but from the capacity to accept another's honest, non-intrusive presence. The super empath's steadfast, non-clinging presence becomes a subtle blow to the illusion of absolute independence, opening the door for the avoidant to learn balance between autonomy and connection, between self and the presence of another. Thank you for staying with us until the very end of this video. Throughout this journey, we've explored key lessons about avoidance and the way they truly love, from the collapse of defense mechanisms to being mirrored in their shadow, experiencing mindful silence, encountering clear emotional boundaries, losing control of their narrative, and ultimately facing the illusion of absolute independence. Each step reminds us that love is not about chasing fleeting emotions, but about honoring your own values, establishing healthy boundaries, and being fully present in relationships with awareness and integrity. Remember, you do not need to sacrifice yourself to be loved, nor do you need to change to hold on to a relationship. Emotional growth begins with choosing your own worth first, allowing relationships to develop on a foundation of respect and safety. I am truly grateful that you spent this time watching today's video. Please share your thoughts or personal experiences in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and learn from your journey. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications to receive more valuable content that will help you continue growing, understanding your relationships, and exploring your own emotion. Believe that every step you take to understand and love yourself is a step toward deeper connection and true happiness. Thank you for walking this journey with me today.